I begin in the name of Allah, the most merciful, the very merciful. I want to try and present the different times of the prayers in a very practical way, visual way. So let's just get right into it. So I'm not a graphic designer, but we have a very simple picture of the earth and the sun. But we want to start at Fajr time, which is the morning prayer. So let's make it nighttime. Let's make this sun disappear. We're going to hide it down here. And we're going to make this nighttime. So in order to understand how the prayer times work, we have to keep in mind that just like when the sun is setting, even though the sun disappears, the sky does not immediately become dark. Similarly, when the time of before the sun rises, there is light, especially in the eastern side of the sky, because the sun rises in the east. So before the sun rises, let's say it's nighttime, it's completely dark. Let's make it completely dark, okay? I don't know why you can see the birds, but it's completely dark. And before that, there is a vertical line of light that appears in the eastern sky. And this light, in the books of Islam, it's known as fake dawn, because it's a vertical line, and this is not when Fajr time starts. Okay? But after a while, what happens is a horizontal line appears in the eastern sky. So let me just draw that. Give me a second, please. I'm going to put this behind the earth that we have. There you go. So when there's a horizontal white light that appears in the eastern sky before the sun comes up, that is when we can start praying the Fajr prayer. But after a while, what happens is the sun starts to appear. So while our sun is 2 ahead, I'm going to put him behind the earth. Well, not yet. Now, what happens after a while is that the sun starts to appear. And as soon as you see that little bit of orange, I don't know if you guys can see it, you see that slight little bit of orange, meaning the circle of the sun starts to appear, you may no longer pray the Fajr prayer because the circle of the sun has appeared, and now the Fajr time is over. Okay? Now let's move on to the Dhuhr prayer. So now, depending on where you live, the sky is very different. Well, let's make it daytime first. Okay, so this is the daytime sky. The sun, depending on where you live, if you live closer to the equator, the sun goes very high until it comes right on top of you. If you live further from the equator, the sun takes a journey that appears closer to the ground. Obviously, we know that the earth is moving and the sun is not moving and all that stuff. So if you look at our chart here, it says the Dhuhr time starts when the sun passes the highest point. So depending on where you live, when the sun is at the highest point in the sky, this is known as istiwa. And I want you to remember that because it's going to be useful in a second. So, well, I don't know what happened there. What happened to my sky? There, okay, we have our sky back. But depending on where you live, this time when the sun is at the highest point in the sky, it is known as istiwa. Okay? I know some people call it zawal, but professionally speaking, that is not appropriate. So, as soon as the sun passes that point and starts declining, and that is when the time for the Dhuhr prayer begins. The hardest time to understand is when the Dhuhr prayer ends. And as a disclaimer, this video is being made according to the Hanafi fiqh. In order to keep it simple, I'm not going to dive into the other fiqhs. And I do apologize for that. So, when does Dhuhr time end? Well, let's rewind a little bit and go to istiwa. And let's put a stick in the sand. So we're going to put a stick in the sand. We're going to make it look less like the sun. This is our stick right here. And what we have to do is we have to find out how long is the shadow of the stick at the time of istiwa. So, one second. According to the example that we have written on the side, it says that the size of the stick is 3 centimeters, but the size of the shadow is 2 centimeters. So we're trying to represent that. Okay? Now, we have to wait for the Dhuhr time until the size at istiwa, which in our equation right here we've written as SI, and we add 2 times the size of the object, which is 3 centimeters. So 3 times 2 is 6. And the size of the object of the shadow at the time of istiwa is 2 centimeters. If we add those two figures together, it becomes 8 centimeters. So we have to watch our object until its shadow becomes 8 centimeters long. And it's actually going to look a lot more like this because our sun is also constantly moving in the sky. So the object is here. The sun, because the lower the sun goes, the longer the shadow is going to become. So let's say the sun is here, and now that the shadow has become 8 centimeters, the time for the Dhuhr prayer is over, and the time for the Asr prayer has begun. When does the time for the Asr prayer end? Well, let me get rid of the birds. I think the birds are getting in the way now. Well, let's make it more darker now. Let's make it more like sunset. Let's say the time for the Asr prayer ends when the sun begins to set. So as soon as you get here, it's a very bad time to be praying the Asr prayer now. And obviously, when the sun has set, you can no longer pray the Asr prayer on time. When the circle of the sun has completely set, now you may begin praying the Maghrib prayer. When does the time for the Maghrib prayer end? Well, it says when the white light disappears from the western sky. What does that mean? Well, in order to understand what happens, let's make it a little bit more darker. After the sun disappears, well, we'll get rid of our stick and our shadow as well. There is light in the sky. And when the sky starts to become even darker than that, well, let's show you. I'm going to move this behind the earth, obviously. And there is still there's a red light in the western sky. If you go tonight after Maghrib prayer, you should notice it. At this time, the Maghrib prayer time is still going on. Then this becomes a white light. Now the Maghrib time is still going on. When does the Maghrib time end? When you look at the western sky and this white light is not even there, and the sky is completely dark, that is when the Maghrib time ends. And the beginning of the Isha time starts. When does the Isha time end? Well, when, like we mentioned earlier, there is white light in the eastern sky, meaning when Fajr time starts. I hope this was comprehensive. Feel free to contact me with any questions. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.